Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sound of the Loons, presented by Allina Health Orthopedics. And now I get to be joined by the one, the only goalkeeper for Minnesota United, World Cup veteran, Dayne St. Clair, back from Qatar, a little extra extended vacation, and now back in Minnesota United colors. How you feeling, Dayne?
Well, first of all, I think that's the best intro I've ever gotten ever, so thank you. But feeling good, of course, back into the swing of things in preseason, and preseason here is never easy, so just trying to grind through it.
Yeah, grinding is probably the operative word there. And I know it's probably tough to be grateful for the fact that you get to do the grind, grateful for the grind when you're in it. But I'm sure if there's anybody working on the side coming back from an injury, they probably wish they could be out there. And you don't even have to run the beep test, for goodness sakes.
We do enough diving instead of doing this. We do our version of it pretty much, which is up and down. So it might not be as much running, but we're definitely getting our goalie fitness in as well.
Yeah, I know. I do agree with that. I would never want to be a goalkeeper. The up and down nature and like falling on your hips, and having, shots fired at your face and all that. I'll take a pass on that. So I agree with you. You don't need to do the beep test. I'll let you off the hook this time. So let's talk about, I want to go back. We're going to gloss over 2022 because we all know how that ended with the playoff loss to Dallas, and you guys have Dallas the first game of the season on February 25th. So that'll be a fun little rematch, but already then your wheels are spinning. That season ends, Minnesota United ends 2022. And then you've got to gear up for the World Cup. How quick was that transition for you? When did you hop on a plane and head out? And then how quickly did you mentally get into that World Cup mode? And what was that moment like?
Yeah, so of course, personally, I was trying to play as many games as I could leading up to that World Cup because training on your own is never the easiest. But I think after that game, took a little time to just kind of decompress and put that kind of season behind me and know that I had to gear up again for the World Cup. So I was actually able to go out to Portland and train with Eric Williamson. We were college roommates, and he was kind of in contention. So he was like, "Come out here, we can train. The weather's probably a little bit nicer than in Minnesota right now." But it was a little nice mental refresh to get out of Minnesota as well before heading over there. So I went out there for like a week, and then came back and kind of hopped on a plane and went to Bahrain first with a bunch. We had like a mini camp with mostly MLS and domestic guys. And then straight from there, it was just basically in the Middle East and Qatar and Dubai and doing all the pre-games and things like that.
So walk me through that feeling. I know you had already been in camps with the Canadian national team, but then once it got to the World Cup and you're getting off the plane there, you're in the hotel, you're you see the city, the country kind of coming alive with the celebrations and the feeling of the World Cup. What was that like for you personally? What was that moment like as far as you think about the little boy you were when you first started playing, and now here you are at a World Cup in Qatar?
Honestly, I'll bring it back like a week before because when we were on the plane to Bahrain was during the MLS Cup final. And of course, Max was supposed to be flying out the next day to come see us. And then our connection in the air wasn't the best, so we weren't able to watch the game. But all of a sudden, a lot of friends and family and start messaging my phone, what happened to Max? What happened to Max? And we're in the air, so we have no clue. And then finally, like one of our phones was able to work enough with Wi-Fi that we found out, and of course, like my heart just sunk for him because our GK union there is so strong, and just cared for him because I know like as much as it was our dream, it was definitely his dream as well, and I hope that he's able to recover well and be there in 2026 because I know how much that World Cup meant for him. So I think, but at the same time, I knew that I had to kind of step up because he's a big figure for the team. Even though he was going to be the backup goalie, he still has a great presence and leadership around the team. So I knew that me stepping up and moving up a spot was going to have to kind of take in that. So it was kind of decompressing and feeling that sadness for him as well. And then noticing that I had to kind of take another step up to be able to support the team the best that I could.
So then you get there, you do some of these extra games, this little mini camp that you had in Bahrain. You get through the World Cup. Maybe it didn't end the way that Canada clearly had hoped it would. Now you've got 2026 to focus on. But then also when the World Cup ended, I know Adrian, when we had him on a podcast, one of the first ones of the year, he said, gave you a little bit of extra break, which makes sense, obviously, for the amount of time that you didn't have off with the World Cup in there. What did you do then during that time to decompress? Did you just go home and do nothing and have like normal life? Or what did you do to decompress to then kind of reset yourself for MLS 2023?
So I went home for a little bit, and then also I went on vacation to Jamaica. Funny enough, with Eric and his girlfriend again, along with my girlfriend. So we had like a week and a half down in Jamaica, just kind of enjoying the weather and kind of decompressing, kind of away from everything. And I feel like it was something that personally I definitely needed, because obviously not only was 2020 long, but knowing the schedule this upcoming year with a lot of international games and domestic games, with Leagues Cup coming in play and the Gold Cup and Nations League, there's going to be a lot of games to play again this year as well. So I thought that as much as it was important for me to decompress from 2022, I had to kind of prepare myself for 2023 and how long it was going to be again, and to kind of just allow myself to kind of disconnect for a little bit.
Did you feel like when you did get to Minnesota that it was the right time? Did you feel like you were ready to come back? Did you have enough decompression time, and then also like ready to physically and mentally get back in it and get back with this group of guys?
Yeah, I think you're always kind of battling that time when you know the team's kind of there and doing things. And I was at home training with my trainer, but I think kind of you're seeing the guys back in team, and you kind of want to be there. And as much as I knew I needed that week, like part of me was like, I ended up coming back a couple of days early, because I was like, I just want to be around the team. And of course we had some new guys as well, so kind of show them around. Of course, me and Daniil have a good relationship from the national team, so kind of just showing him what Minnesota is and kind of preparing, because I know that this could be a big year for a lot of us.
Yeah, I know you made the comment the other day on Twitter about getting off the plane back in Minnesota after Orlando. And he was telling me the other day about when we did a podcast that people were telling him like, oh my gosh, it's so cold in Minnesota. And he's like, I'm Canadian. And they're like, no, this is different. What kind of advice did you give him to tell him to make sure he packed his parka, or what?
I mean, just because we're Canadian doesn't mean we like it. We're just used to it.
Hey, I get it.
I'm used to it. I can deal with the cold, but I don't think any of us like it. And we all have, like, all of our parents and stuff are from the Caribbean. So our ongoing joke is we all have Caribbean blood, so we're not used to this. But I think nothing really prepares you for it. But it's just something like growing up. We grew up in Toronto. We grew up with the snow. Like, it's not that dissimilar. Like, you know what I mean? You stay inside when it's cold and you go about your business. So I think it's more so different for the guys that have never seen the snow or are used to the cold. Like, we're used to it. So everyone's like, yeah, it's so cold. And I was like, I'm not leaving my house anyways. It's like, I'm not going to go for a walk right now. Like, it's freezing out.
I remember when I saw one day last year when Bongi first got here, and he was walking from the NSC building outside that little stretch before you get into the dome. And he just had this look on his face like, what am I doing? It was one of those like.
No, that walk is definitely becomes a wind tunnel. And I think they need to find a way to cover it up so that we're just inside the whole time, because of course you're going out to training, so you're not going to have a jacket on or anything like that. But when that wind gets in there, it can definitely get cold for sure. So yeah, I'll give him a pass on that one, but I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I always kind of laugh the first time I see like any of the guys from South America, or obviously from, South Africa or whatever, even Boxall, to be honest, being from New Zealand, where he comes like straight off the beach, when it's summertime there, and when he comes back to preseason, but at least he's used to it now. But I always kind of laugh the first time I see all of them show up in Minnesota, like, what is going on here? But you're right. You just you go about your business, and that's the nature of the beast, especially for your industry and your career path. You never know where you're going to be. It could be, 100 degrees in Houston next week. It could be 20 below for opening day here. What is it, March 11th for you guys? So you just have to kind of roll with the punches. But I'm with you. Just because we're from a cold weather place doesn't mean we have to like it.
No, exactly. And of course, you like I said, you get used to it, but it's definitely not something that you look forward to. I'm sure a lot of people in Minnesota are definitely looking forward to the summer and the walks and the rooftops and everything like that. So
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about 2023. What was the feeling when you got into camp? How did that feel for you? I know there's a couple new, at least one new goalkeeper on the squad that's training every day, and Stewie Kerr is back in there training you guys. But from a whole roster standpoint, what was it like to get back in with the guys, to see some of the new faces, some familiar, some not, and then also the returning guys, and how are you feeling about 2023?
I think everyone's always excited to start the season because everyone starts with a fresh slate. And of course, kind of the way that last year kind of ended, I think kind of left a sour taste in a lot of our mouths. And like I said, there's new competitions this year. So that allows us another chance to go and win something, you know what I mean? And I think every team going into the season they want to win something. That's why we play, you know what I mean? We're all competitors at heart, and I think just kind of getting together and figuring out how are we going to go about this and how are we going to kind of get over that hump that we haven't been able to get over as a club.
Anything really surprising to you thus far in preseason? Any specific individual, anybody that you're impressed with? Maybe someone that's new, someone that's, was maybe that you didn't see as much last year, that you're back in the mix. I know a couple people have talked about Cameron Dunbar and just being still a young, kind of hungry player coming over from the Galaxy. But anybody else, anything else surprising to you?
Yeah, I think Cam's done well when he's come in, and I think me personally, of course, me and Hassani kind of came in together. So seeing him get closer and closer to getting back on the field with us, I think has been inspiring because, of course, he's had a lot of success here in many different positions, and I know he's going to continue to, and we definitely missed him a lot last year. So I'm kind of looking forward to him kind of getting fully back in the mix, and he's been progressing well. So I think the end is near for him, and I think even just personally, I think that's going to be a big day when he's able to kind of come back and train with the team and be fully involved. And I know it's something that he's worked hard in the offseason, staying here to make sure that he's ready for the first few games of the year.
Are you guys at the point yet where you're ready to be done playing against each other? I know you've had a couple preseason games, and I know you guys are heading to Coachella, which is going to be a massive tournament with a lot of really good competition for you guys for preseason. But are you guys at the moment yet where you're like, oh my gosh, can we just start the season already? Because I know that grind starts to happen. Or are you still in a spot where you're like, okay, we could use a couple more weeks here before we get going with games that count?
Yeah, I think this preseason tournament is going to be nice. I think always having the second part of preseason kind of being a tournament where you can still kind of test some things out, but you know that there's a competition at hand as well, I think is going to be nice. And I think, of course, getting back on the grass is always ideal with us. We always want to be playing on the grass when possible. So I think being able to kind of compete for that in the beginning of the preseason, and I think it allows some guys to continue to fight for spots and to have that flexibility in our roster to be able to compete on opening weekend against Dallas, which we know is a big game, especially with the way that the season ended last year. And the first game of the season is always going to be a big one.
What's your goal? Do you sit down and write goals? And maybe you don't, but just mentally, like what do you want to accomplish this season? I mean, you were MLS All-Star and MLS All-Star MVP last year, so it's going to be tough to ratchet up a notch from an individual perspective. But what are some of your goals for this season for 2023?
Yeah, I think, of course, I kind of had a good, start of the season was definitely good. And kind of being in that all-star mix, of course, is something that I want to continue to be a part of. But I think I want to improve on my consistency. I know there were some games that I was very good last year, and there were some games that I know that I could have improved. And I think when I look at the full body of work, I want to be able to not just have that conversation about potential all-star, but I want to have that conversation about potential goal of the year and being that mix for that, because I think a lot of people talk to me about me midway and halfway through the season, and then things kind of faded out towards the end. So I want to make sure that I'm consistently playing at that level. And I know that I've had those big performances and I know that I'm capable of it, but I also want to continue to have that consistency and kind of take it up a notch as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dayne, for joining me. I know you're gonna stick around for one more segment here. We're gonna have a special guest, Justin Morrow, former MLS player, most recently with Toronto FC, but part of Black Players for Change, and we're going to talk a lot about that, and of course, Black History Month as well. But Dayne, thank you for joining me for segment number 1, and I'll see you in segment number 2.
Sounds good. See you in a little bit.
When injury takes you out of the game, it's time for your team to step up. At Allina Health Orthopedics, you'll get expert care backed by a whole health system of providers. With records, test results, and care team, you are always close to the care you need. Schedule now at allinahealth.org/ortho. Welcome back to Sound of the Loons, presented by Allina Health Orthopedics. Again, I'm Kyndra St, and this time I get to be joined by Dayne St. Clair once again, who's back for segment number 2, but also Justin Morrow, retired MLS player, but very important piece of the Black Players for Change. And I know we've talked about it a bit, and Dayne, you and I hit on it in the first segment, but also February, Black History Month. So an important time to really emphasize and focus on the positive things and what you guys are doing in Black Players for Change. But let's give everybody a little bit of history. What is Black Players for Change, and how did it come about back on June 19th of 2020? Justin, you want to kick it off for us?
Yeah, I'll kick it off, and I'll start by saying thanks for having me. I love joining these conversations. Number one, to shed some light on BPC, but also talk about Black excellence, the wonderful history that we contribute to this culture here, not only in the United States, but worldwide. So thanks again. Black Players for Change, starting in the summer of 2020, it was an uncertain time for all of us, for sure, living through the pandemic, being stressed with not knowing what's going to happen next with jobs, with health, and everything else going on. And then George Floyd is murdered, and, the country goes into hysteria, and everybody, rightly so at that time, was trying to figure out what we could do within ourselves to help promote change and do our part. And the Black players in Major League Soccer were no different, and a lot of us, besides what people think from the outside, a lot of us are friends. A lot of us grew up playing together in the same city, same clubs, getting traded from different clubs, what it may be. We're in contact with each other a lot. And so, messages were flying all around the league, and guys were just chatting a lot about what we could do. And so we came together first through Zoom and just trying to figure out what we could do, and thought about creating a moment, which ultimately became our protest moment down in Orlando at the MLS's back tournament. But decided also that we wanted to create something that was going to go beyond that, something that would allow future generations of Black players in the league to have a seat at the table always. And so that's kind of the genesis of Black Players for Change. And it came about in that moment. We never shy from that, but we also talk about the things that were happening within Major League Soccer ahead of that kind of led up to this necessary moment, if you will. So incredible journey so far. Been a couple of years now, and we're still hard at work, but really proud of everything that we've done.
When you talk about that there was a lot of you that grew up together, played on club together, were traded different MLS clubs, and we're not even just talking about youth clubs, but also MLS clubs. So it maybe started as a group chat, right? Somebody starts it, there's 5, 10, 15 of you on it, and it builds. So at what moment, Dayne, did you decide that this is something maybe you wanted to be a part of? And also then who took the next step? Because actually organizing something like this and organizing, that's a big deal. That's next level for you guys to make sure that this came to fruition. So Dayne, how did you decide to get involved? And then also, how did this go to that next step, next level to be involved and make the commitment?
Yeah, I think kind of like we said, it all kind of sparked after that George Floyd. So of course that happened in our backyard here in Minnesota. So I feel like a lot of the players on our team were talking about it. And I was actually on loan at the time to San Antonio during that pandemic time. So I was kind of just in group chats and stuff like that about it was uncertainty if I was going to come back, because no one was sure if the USL was going to play or not. So it was kind of just in group chats, what can we do to kind of help our community? And some of the guys on the team went to the different protests in Minnesota, and I wish that I could have been there as well. But I was in San Antonio at the time, and then through kind of Ike, kind of connected with Justin Morrow and kind of got our players. Ike made a group chat with all our players at Minnesota and was like, this is kind of what's going on. We're not sure where this is going yet, but we kind of want to have an impact. And we know that what happened in our community has kind of sparked this whole thing. So we want to have a big say in what's going on. And of course, some guys took it on more than others. And being the type of people that we are, we kind of wanted to step up. And although I wasn't able to be there physically for the demonstration, kind of leading up to some of the things and helping out and giving different ideas, I thought was important from my side, and to kind of continue things on to help our community.
So Justin, then how did that go to the next level, from the initiation of this idea, these group chats, to someone actually taking the reins and sort of guiding this into what it is now? I mean, you guys have a mission statement, you have everything that you want to accomplish, things that you have already accomplished. You've had partners that are helping you accomplishing these things, businesses and otherwise. So how did it get to that next level to take that next step?
I mean, quite honestly, just through a lot of hard work and grit and determination. You know, there was a core group of veterans that really started this thing, and I always call us the pioneers. And really with the idea that we'd create this legacy and bring along as many people as possible. And so you go from all of us being at home in our own markets, maybe experiencing the pandemic in slightly different ways, to all of a sudden all being together in Orlando for the MLS's back tournament, which had never happened before. So we knew we were going to have this incredible opportunity to get everyone together and create a moment. We were going to be one of the first leagues back to play. Everyone was going to be watching us on national television worldwide. And we really put a lot of effort and energy into that. I remember the night before getting together and practicing what we were going to do. And it still wasn't all together at that moment, but you could just feel us, you know, being in a brotherhood together and really committed to it. And we put on the incredible moment, and after that, no one wanted to let it go. You know, there's the moment when we walk off the field in Orlando and everyone's hugging each other and giving high fives, and that's a moment that sticks with us forever. But we didn't want to let that feeling go, that feeling that we stood up for something, that we continued on a legacy that was started long before us, and that we're creating something for the future generation. And so that's kind of what we've hung on to and continued our work to this day.
I know on the site it says 170 plus Black players, coaches, and staff in MLS, but do you feel like it's much broader than that? Or how do you define maybe membership? You know, how do people, how do players, how do coaches, training staff, whatever it might be, how are they involved, even if they're not necessarily considered members? Or how do you qualify that?
Well, as you can imagine, professional sports is very fluid. So there's always guys in and out. But I think the most important thing that we always talking about is creating a space for people to join and feel included, especially new players as they're coming into the league, to know that there's somewhere for them to go for mentorship, for guidance, maybe something that didn't exist in the past. You know, coming from the amateur level to the professional level is a major transition, and you throw race on top of that and it doesn't get easier. And so we're here for them. And we always just, everything we do, calls, in-person meetings, we always start off by just sharing the space together and catching up with each other and making jokes and just feeling calm and comfortable with each other. And I think that's one of the best things that we've done. We can talk about all the policy work and programs and activations we've done, but that is the best thing that we've done, so that there will always be a space for us moving forward.
Well, and you can check off a lot of boxes of things when you talk about protest, policy, you know, demonstrations, community activities that you guys have done. But when I'm looking at your site, couple of the quotes and things that kind of mission statements that stuck out to me were creating an equitable stake in the game of soccer and society, and working to bridge the racial equality gap that exists in society. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's an organized activity. It can just be on a daily basis that you can have a hand in that. And Dayne, do you feel that a little bit in the community in Minnesota and what you've been able to accomplish, even if it's just being in the community, out in the community activities, that you feel like you can continue that same message and kind of drive that home?
Yeah, for sure. I think another big thing, of course, our club does a lot of stuff in the community, but I think also with the addition of BPC now, with there's a contact point for some of these different community outreach places or things to contact to let players know. Because I think even during the All-Star, of course, we did the Hometown Heroes, and there were some of those foundations and stuff that I know nothing about, and I've been here for 4 years now. So I think just the awareness and to be able to expand more. Of course, there's always so much going on behind the scenes and things like that. But I think even for us just showing up to an event for 30 minutes or things like that, like talking to some of the people at All Star, I'm still messaging some of them now just to, hey, when you have an event, let me know, because for us sometimes it's hard to know when these events and things are. So I'm not guaranteeing that I can make it, but if I can fit in our schedule or someone on our team can know about it, I think it's nice to show the community as well that there's representation to those kids as well, that we're here and that you can become this, and seeing it live. I think it's different sometimes seeing it on TV. It's like, can I really become that? But I think then when you see the people in person and them talking to you and things like that, I think is definitely has been one of our goals to kind of be in the community and be there in person for the people.
Well, and Justin, you talked about what Black Players for Change is and what it means and how it came about. But this was something that, was in the works long before your time, before any of us were here, as far as what needed to happen. And maybe the George Floyd murder was something that sort of spurred everybody to kind of get on the same page and make a change. What has been the biggest impact you think thus far that Black Players for Change has been able to do, whether it's on a bigger scale, a smaller scale? What's one of the bigger things that you've seen?
Well, I always give props to Major League Soccer because from the beginning, they recognize how special Black Players for Change is, and they've been in constant communication and have a great working relationship with us. And so now we've created this lane, this avenue for Major League Soccer as a league to consult their players on the things that are maybe going good or maybe could do a little bit better. And they've admitted to shortcomings in the past. So now when we deal with incidents of race or any discrimination for that matter, they bring us into the conversation, and we have formal ways to do that, whether that's through some of the committees that we've organized, or we have informal ways through the relationships that we've built with the commissioner and his close executives. So it's just been incredible to continue this work. And like I said, build for the next generation. It's something that we're all still committed to this day. And in that way, we are able to push the league forward now, because we all recognized it in 2020 that these things have happened in the past and no change has really been made. But the fact that we're still here today and pushing and knocking on the door, that holds them accountable in some type of way. So, when we talk about what have we gained, what have we progressed in what ways, for me, it's exactly that. It's continuing to keep a pulse on it, continuing to make sure that things are happening in the background, from a systemic level, the policies that we can change, but also just the acknowledgement that racism exists in our league and we are trying to do something about it. Because we've been in conversations with our global allies, and it's not so easy for other cultures to recognize how racism plays out in their different systems, whether it be at their league, their health system, their education system, whatnot. And at least over here, we are having the conversation and continuing to work away at it day after day and month after month and year after year. And for me, that's what progress is.
That's a really good point, because we're talking about you guys reaching out to the community, being a part of the community, trying to make a change in society. But even when Black Players for Change came about, what were some of the conversations you maybe had with your own team, with your own teammates, with your own, conversations about race and the feelings? Was that an open conversation? Was that part of the education? And you don't have to, speak about specific situations and instances, but I mean, it can start in your own home, your own backyard, your own club, before you're even having to reach out into the community.
Yeah, I'll touch on that quick, and then Dayne, you can jump in. I just want to touch on it because I have an incredible view into so many of the conversations that were being had across the locker rooms in North America. And like you mentioned, that's really a great genesis for conversation, and it can come about in a lot of different ways. I remember the national anthem and having players kneel or not. That was a great conversation starter. Different tops and gear that we've coordinated to wear. That's another great conversation starter. And then, of course, when the clubs join in, and from a team side, you start having trainings, culture trainings, EDI trainings to learn about history. That's another opportunity to have a conversation. And these were things that weren't happening in the past. So I know media is very controversial right now, especially social media, and we put things in buckets, in either a good bucket or a bad bucket. But we've taken everything as an opportunity to have the conversations that we weren't having before. And even if someone expressed a negative sentiment towards what we were doing and continue to do, we allow that as a doorway into having conversation with someone who we might have had in the past, and maybe don't expect to meet in the middle every single time, but to gain an understanding of each other, I think is an important start towards reconciliation.
Well, and Dayne, you came into the league at a different time than Justin came into the league. So there's probably had been some changes, some differences even from when Justin, and not Justin, I'm not trying to date you here. I'm much older than you are, but Dayne's kind of still on the young side of things. I covered him at the draft. But what have you seen, Dayne, in the league just since 2020? What kind of changes have you seen? And what else would you like to see, not just in the league, but, you know, in community and society? It doesn't have to be some crazy, you know, stand up on a stage type of a thing, but what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think in Minnesota we've always had a decent amount of Black players here, so being able to kind of connect, and I think whenever you go to a new team, you kind of gravitate towards the people that you relate to the most. And then even now, I think getting players from other teams or things like that, whenever there's a trade happening, it's like, okay, like maybe I've met this guy on BPC, or we've had some of the kind of the same initiatives. We've been on some kind of calls and things like that. So it's kind of for new players, broaden the group of people that you've met. And of course, chemistry is so important in our sport. So anytime you can kind of relate or meet anyone like that, I think has been important. And then as one of the guys that have been here the longest now, I think it's just kind of showing guys that, hey, this BBC, it's available for you guys. Not necessarily, if it's not something that you want to be a part of every day, no problem. But this is an outlet for anyone that needs it or wants it on our team. And I think, like Justin said, it's about having the conversations. And I think some of them are going to be formal, some of them are informal, some of them everyone's agreeing, some people have disagreements, but it's at least getting a better understanding of why people feel the way they do. And I think it allows us to talk about the reason why we feel that way.
And Justin, I wanted to just ask you quick about one of the initiatives that I also saw on the website was talking about these mini pitches that you guys have been already doing, but committing to 10 more by the end of 2023. What does something like that do to the community, for the community? What do you see in those moments with the mini pitches in the different communities? And why is that such an important initiative amongst all the other things you guys are doing?
Yeah, we always talk about Black Players for Change, and we talk about it in the ways that we work inside the league and outside of the league. And the mini pitch initiative is one of the things that we do in our communities outside of the league to eliminate barriers. We know this sport is hard to access on many different levels. The cost of field time is way up through the roof, and we know where that money is going. And so that excludes a lot of people. And that's exactly what this mini pitch initiative is all about. You know, we thank our partners at US Soccer Foundation, Musco Lighting, Adidas, that have been so great for us to help us build these mini pitches all over the place. And really, it's just a safe place to play, where the community can unite around and know that the kids can have that opportunity to just try something out. And, you know, in youth sports these days, everything is so organized. Everything is scheduled. Everything is teams, leagues, events type of thing. And kids don't just go outside and play anymore. And we wanted to kind of hold that sacrimonious and sacrosanct in some type of way. And so that's what this is all about, to take it back to the old days and make sure that there's always a space there for kids to play, and hopefully get new types of kids involved in the sport, because I think we've seen over decades now that it's excluded a lot.
And just last but not least, as we talk about Black History Month and Black Players for Change, if there was one message that each of you wanted to leave going forward, what would that be? What would the message be? What are sort of the hopes and the goals of not just your organization, but also just during Black History Month that people could take away from this part of the podcast and this discussion?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's kind of like when we had our first protest. We don't want it to just be this 1 month thing where we highlight things and then that's it. And then next year we do it again. I think it's about having continuous conversations and support. And of course, it's nice to highlight those things. But I think beyond this month, what can we continue to do to help our communities?
Yeah, Dane hit it right on the head. He said it perfectly. Celebration of Black people last year, all year long. It's not just a month. For me, the history part is really important as well. I know it's something that's under attack right now in our country. And so to ground ourselves in that and really give an effort to learn about something you don't know about Black history, that goes a long way as well. So for me, continuing to celebrate our heritage and our culture is always important.
Well, I appreciate both of you for joining me today to talk about Black Players for Change, but more importantly, Black History Month. And I know that you're joining me today for this podcast, but to echo your sentiment, hopefully this is a conversation that's not just going on in February. It can be going on year round, not just something that we're celebrating and talking about in the month of February, but something that we can talk about and have celebrations for 12 months out of the year. So thank you both so much for joining me today for this discussion.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you.
All right, everybody, we're going to sign off for now, but join us next week for another episode of Sound of the Loons right here, presented by Allina Health Orthopedics.